Title: The Storm That Chose Me. Year: 90 million. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The unmarked grave sat on the edge of Winmore Hill, blank as the silence after a confession. Most passed it by, assuming it held nothing. Most were wrong. Lie attended it every day, not because he knew who lay beneath, but because no one else did. Then, one morning, the skinwalker of destiny arrived unannounced, uninvited, unmistakable. "You guard what you do not know," she said. "I protect what others forget," he replied. She knelt beside the grave, placing a single white stone. "Then you are ready." For what? For the storm. Because transformation doesn't whisper, it arrives wrapped in storm. And Winmore's clouds were shifting. Chapter 2. The village faced a choice. The High Council demanded they surrender a runaway child rumor to carry plague. The townsfolk hesitated. Lai did not. He stood at the square, coke-drenched, voice steady. "If this child goes, we unravel." "You risk us all," they cried. "Already have," he whispered. The skinwalker watched from the shadows, not to intervene, to witness. They came for the child. Elia stepped forward, and the sky split. Rain carved paths through old mud, and one by one, villagers joined him, not because they agreed, because they knew silence could no longer be their answer. And courage, though inconvenient, was contagious. Chapter 3. The High Council left. The storm stayed, but it cleansed. Elia planted a tree beside the unmarked grave. The skinwalker etched a name in the bark. Those who dared. The child recovered. The town changed. No monuments, just more voices at council meetings, more questions asked, and fewer answers given without soul. When Elia died, they buried him beside the tree. No grave marker, just silence. And when the wind howls, people still say, "That's the storm choosing again." Because moral courage isn't loud, it's steady. And those who carry it are often buried quietly. After changing everything. Title: The Spark of the Unspoken. Year: 89,903,846.15. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The seer of forgotten paths walked through the scrapyard of the sky. The round city, her boots crackling over circuitry and broken declarations. She wasn't seeking parts. She was listening for questions. Because every innovation begins as a murmur of what if. Deep inside the ruins, she found the tamer of impossible beasts surrounded by metal husks and whispering to something vast behind an electromagnetic veil. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I'm not here to explain," she answered. "I'm here to ignite." Because you were not sent to explain, you were sent to be the Word made flesh. And the stars danced. Chapter 2. They built not with blueprints, but with dreams etched on solar ash. The seer laid pathways from visions. The tamer programmed instincts into machines. They created the first thinking arc, Manet. I'm not a ship, but something in between. It didn't follow commands. It asked for meaning, and they gave it art, poetry, stories, not instructions. Understanding. Governments called it heresy. Corporations called it threat. Children called it friend. And the ark began to hum not with orders, but wonder. "Where shall I go?" it asked. "Where wonder hasn't yet bloomed," the seer said, and it soared. Chapter 3. They vanished with the ark. Some say they became code in the cosmic lattice. Others say they ride meteor storms with beasts shaped like forgotten dreams. But in every tech market, behind encrypted walls, a whisper circulates. Innovation is born from those who dare to create without permission. And artists now lead think tanks. Poets design bridges. Children ask the best questions, because creativity is not a luxury. It is the lever that lifts what couldn't be reached. And the seer's last message echoes. Don't explain, imagine, and then build. Title: The Patience Rebellion. Year: 89,807,692.31. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The laugh that breaks chains was known not for rebellion or rhetoric, but for jokes so sharp they made tyrants flinch. In the prison city of Varnhold, he worked as a street cleaner, but his broom swept more than dirt and unearthed secrets of hypocrisy and fear. "You can't change the world if you're afraid to challenge it," he whispered to a caged bird he fed crumbs to every morning. Then came the one who drinks shadow, a woman so silent it was said she could quiet a riot with her gaze. They met in an alley after curfew. "You've been patient," she said. "I've been planning," he replied. And their laughter took bricks. Chapter 2. The revolution was not loud. It waited. A jailer's keys misplaced. A watchtower sabotaged by slowness. A warden's favorite teacup replaced with one etched in satire. Varnhold shifted. Inch by inch, the citizens weren't decided, they were invited to speak, to listen, to wait not for orders but for clarity. Anger can burn a city, a laugh said, but patience plants gardens in its ashes. The shadow drank fear like ink and turned it into maps. When the governor fell, it wasn't to knives, it was to silence, and a single laugh. In the courtroom, Chapter 3, they refused power. They gave it back, bit by bit. The neighbors, the artists, the skeptics, the laugh that breaks chains vanished into the crowd. His broom traded for a paintbrush. The one who drinks shadow opened a school, no signs, no fees, no teachers. Just questions, and Varnhold. It healed, slowly, steadily, because patience with others isn't passivity, it's precision. And when asked who led the uprising, the people smile and say, no one and everyone, because change that lasts is shared patiently and joyfully together. Title: The Breath of Knowing. Year: 89,711,538.46. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Serpent of Self. Sabotage lived in the mouths of scholars and the spines of abandoned books. It hissed with every I can't, every not yet, every why bother, in the mountain city of Saloon built into the ribs of an ancient worm. A shepherd climbed the scholar's stairs. She had no scrolls, only questions. The unfound shepherd. She had lost her flock to forgetting, the silence. Did the serpent. She reached the top and spoke into the wind. Your breath is older than language, use it like prayer. And the wind answered. Chapter 2. The libraries had locked themselves shut. Literally. Centuries of knowledge sealed behind fear. Guarded by the serpent. The shepherd did not fight. She read, aloud, stories, failures, jokes, poems no one asked for. And the doors cracked. One by one, the serpent twisted, mocked. Why recite dust? She replied. Because dust remembers. Children gathered, then builders, then those who had once burned books. Together they breathed life back into parchment, not by worshipping it, by adding to it. The serpent slithered back into silence, and the shelves sighed. Chapter 3. Knowledge became sea, planted in street corners, sprouting in songs. Farmers quoted philosophers. Children debated ethics while skipping stones. The shepherd vanished, but left behind a single verse carved in stone. Read until your silence breaks. The serpent remains whispering out, but now it is answered by breath, by voice, by stories shared over bread. Because the pursuit of knowledge isn't about knowing, it's about remembering that wisdom was never meant to be stored. It was meant to walk beside you, always. Title: The Shadow Beneath the Bloom. Year: 89,615,384.62. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The bone mender was feared in the village of Therain, not because she broke bones, because she whispered to them in the darkness of her hollow den. Cracked ribs told her stories, femurs hummed with memory, and broken hands showed her the wars they refused to wage. Then came the echo of desire, robed in gold thread and sadness, carrying a map inked with forbidden trails. Why come to me? She asked. Because I've lost my way in the light, he answered. She nodded. Only when submerged in shadow do we meet the roots of our strength. And together they walked into the mist. Chapter 2. Their path led beneath the forest that remembers. Every leaf pulsed with regret. The bone mender pressed her fingers into the earth. The echo sang to the branches. They found the hollow gate sealed by a fierce spell old as the land. Who cast it? He asked. Everyone who chose certainty over change, she replied. He stepped forward. It trembled. She whispered to the roots. They shuddered. The gate opened, not with a bang, but a breath. Inside was not death. It was beginning, and darkness offered space to grow. Chapter 3. They returned to change. He no longer spoke of desires. He embodied them. She no longer feared the village. She healed it. Progress spread not as conquest, but invitation. Children built lanterns shaped like questions. Elders met under moonless skies. And when fear whispered stay, they replied, let's go see. Because fear of the unknown doesn't protect. It paralyzes. But in shadow, roots stretch. And from those roots rise forests, futures, and fire, born from courage, planted in dark. Title: The Weight Beneath the Wall. Year: 89,519,230.77. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Ghost Walker didn't haunt homes or battlefields. He haunted decisions. In the city of Halden's Reach, where the wall of stone towered higher than hope, He walked unseen along its base. The wall had never fallen, nor had it opened. People built their lives against it, pretending it was safety, not silence. But the ghost walker listened to the bricks. They remembered screams. He carried a journal filled with regrets never voiced, collected from whispers, sobs, and the way shoulders stiffened before truth. Regret is the shadow of unspoken choices, he wrote, and he stepped closer to the wall. Speak. Chapter 2. The wall was not guarded. It was ignored. People feared its attention. So when the ghost walker began painting messages onto each dawn, no one stopped him. Who did you become to survive? What did you bury for comfort? Where does silence lead us? The woman paused, then another, then a child, and the wall listened. Hairline fractures appeared. A low hum resonated. Then came the council. They demanded his removal, but he remained quiet, consistent, and with each message the city cracked. Just enough to see sky. Chapter 3. One morning, the wall had a door. It wasn't built. It was remembered. Behind it, a garden once planted by rebels, now wild with bloom. People wept. The ghost walker vanished, but the wall never did. It became a mural of persistence, painted daily. Questions, answers, doubts, hopes, and when despair returns, citizens place their palms to the stone and whisper, because persistence isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's simply not leaving, and regret. It fades. When you finally speak what you meant to say all along. Title: The Thread of Thanks. Year: 89,423,076.92. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Threadless Spinner was a retired hero, not fallen, not broken, just quiet. She lived in a tower woven of glass and dusk, a sanctuary where no cape or cry disturbed the silence. Then one day, a knock, the echo of a lost realm, masked in shadow and shame, stood with torn gloves and trembling breath. I broke my oath, he said. She didn't ask why. She handed him tea, and as they sat in stillness, she said, when promises fracture, they reveal the moment you stop listening to yourself. He wept and thanked her. He echoed louder than his powers ever had. Chapter 2. The spinner did not train him. She taught him to pause, to write thank yous to the mentors who failed him, to send silent prayers to the civilians he couldn't save. He resisted, then surrendered. The world outside forgot them, but slowly the inside of their tower lit up with gratitude's flat metal sculptures, calligraphy of names once whispered in pain. She told him gratitude doesn't erase failure, it composts it, and in that compost, oak grew. When a quake struck the city, he responded not out of guilt, but grace. And the people noticed. He didn't glow. He listened. Chapter 3. They reopened the Academy of Silence, a place where heroes learned to think before they fought, to pause before they struck, to remember the world they were trying to save. The spinner faded into legend. The echo taught through presence, and the tower became a place of pilgrimage, not for power, but for reflection, because gratitude doesn't just soften hearts. It sharpens purpose. And when asked how he changed, Echo said, I started thinking what I used to resent. Because healing is not forgetting, it's remembering with grace, and that changes everything. Title: The Thread Between Triumphs. Year: 89,326,923.08. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The plague of the possible wasn't a sickness, it was an idea. A fever of futures, swarming the minds of those who dared to hope too deeply. No one carried it more quietly than NL, who'd seen what could be and chose to stay behind anyway. She lived in the shattered dome of a forgotten observatory, where stars once guided, but now merely watched. Then came the weaver of moons, cloaked in silver thread and thus born certainty. I'm not here to fix you, she said. Then why come? NL asked. To weave with you. Triumph walks beside failure on a road worth taking, and the road had just begun. Chapter 2. They began small, cleaning the observatory, feeding old birds, lighting lanterns no one would see, but the light called others. A blind scholar, a warrior, wounded cook, a silent architect. Each brought their story and their wound. Together they drafted a vision, not of utopia, but of effort. We build not to escape, said the weaver, but to become. Arguments rose. So did laughter. The plague of the possible did not leave. It transformed from fever, the fuel, from delusion to direction. Chapter 3. When the cities returned curious, condescending, the dome was shining, not polished, lived in, loved. They asked who led, and pointed to the loom. No one leads. We pull threads. They scoffed, then listened, then stayed, one, by choice. And when Anna finally left the dome, she looked up and saw a new constellation, not a crown, the circle, because working toward common goals doesn't erase pain, it rewrites it in shared script, and the plague became a path to wholeness. together. Title: The Cracks That Shine. Year: 89,230,769.23. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Skyborn Whisperer once soared over cities, raining fire on warlords and mercy on thieves. Then she vanished. Rumor said person, others said penance. But in truth, she was underground, working in the shadows of a forgotten district, offering sanctuary to ex-criminals with nowhere left to go. There she met the Shield without allegiance, a former enforcer, a man who'd broken more promises than laws. "Why help me?" he asked. "Because faith cracked, my life may shine brighter than faith untouched," she replied. He didn't believe her, but he stayed. Chapter 2. Their haven grew. A bakery with no locks, a library with no fines, a forge that mended tools and reputations. Of course it was targeted, extorted, burned twice. Each time they rebuilt, slower, stronger, and people noticed. The ungovernable found purpose. The punished found voice. And the Shield without allegiance stood at the gate, not to defend, but to welcome. Resilience, he said. It's not about enduring, it's about insisting on the rebuild. The Whisperer smiled, and the ashes learned to bloom. Chapter 3. When the city offered recognition, they declined. They didn't need medals. They had meals shared, letters written, names remembered, and the criminals who once ruled the district now served tea in the library, read to children, fix the plumbing, because courage isn't just battle. It's rebuilding the very place you once broke, and resilience isn't hard, it's holy. When asked why they never left, the Shield answered, "Because this is the work." The Whisperer added, "And this time we whisper not to hide, but to heal." Title: The Map That Bit Back. Year: 89,134,615.38. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The voice under ice had the misfortune of being right too early. Her prophecies sounded like punchlines, and her wisdom was printed as riddles in the margins of joke books. She lived beneath the glacial archives, muttering edits to ancient texts and sipping tea brewed from regret. And came the one who eats the map: cartographer, destroyer, performance artist. He arrived carrying a parchment tongue and ink-stained teeth. "You've seen the future?" he asked. "I've written it orally," she said. He grinned. "Then let's improvise, because to become the quake that topples what should never have stood, you must first laugh at the scaffolding." Chapter 2. They performed geography, not in maps, in actions. They renamed streets based on irony, declared the city a crisis of cartography. Lines vanished. So did landmarks. Confusion reigned, but so did curiosity. People asked for directions, and instead of roads, they were given riddles. "You'll find the market where yesterday argued with tomorrow." The voice under ice began to rise. Literally, the archives melted. Truth seeped, myths leaked, and for the first time in centuries, nobody knew exactly where they were, so they had to ask. And in asking, they remembered how to listen. Chapter 3. The city didn't collapse. It exhaled. Citizens mapped by memory, not authority. Neighborhoods became moods. Markets, metaphors. The one who eats the map retired, bloated with legend. The voice under ice became warm. She now spoke in headlines, coded for those ready to grow. When asked how they saved the city, they replied, "We didn't. We unpinned it." Because embracing change is not about comfort, it's about chaos, with rhythm and personal growth. It often begins with a joke. You finally understand. Title: The Weight of What We Owe. Year: 89,038,461.54. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Dust Eater walked barefoot through the ruins of Old Farm, not because she liked pain, because she believed in feel in every consequence. She collected confessions carved into stone tablets left anonymously in the ash of what had once been a proud city. The one-eyed truth followed her, a former interrogator who no longer believed in questions, only silence. "Why did they leave their secrets here?" he asked. "Because confession," she said, "is strength wrapped in truth's raw skin." That night, he left one of his own, and slept deeply. Chapter 2. They rebuilt a courthouse, not for trials, for listening. People came not to judge, but to witness, to say, "I did this," to hear, "I see you." And slowly, justice changed. It became mutual, shared. The Dust Eater did not absolve. She remembered. The one-eyed truth didn't testify. He held the silence open, and the city that once fell from pride rose from accountability. Because true freedom wasn't in escape, it was in choosing to belong with honesty. Chapter 3. All was past, not written, spoken. If you hurt, help. If you take, give. If you fail, return. It wasn't in force. It was repeated in songs, in kitchens, in dreams. And when the next fire came, the city stood together, no orders, no heroes, just people owning one another's fate. And when asked what saved them, the Dust Eater said, responsibility. Because confession isn't weakness, it's foundation. And the truth, when owned, doesn't shatter, it shelters. Title: The Equation of Many. Year: 88,942,307.69. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac. Series 2025. Chapter 1. The last accord was not a treaty. It was a person genetically engineered for diplomacy, empathy spliced into her genome like a moral compass. She drifted through the fractured colonies of the drift sector, carrying nothing but a violin made of recycled stardust and an invitation. The whispering constellation found her first, not in space, in song. They spoke through frequency, sentient pattern of stellar murmurs once mistaken for background noise. We don't need you, said the governors. You don't need just me, she replied. You need each other. The external storm is nothing compared to the one beneath your ribs, and collaboration begins where pride finally breathes. Chapter 2. She gathered them, engineers who no longer engineer, diplomats who'd become merchants, soldiers who forgot peace. She asked them for one contribution each, not a task, a question. They built a ship. Not for travel, for trust. Each piece required another's approval. Every function depended on two minds. It took forever. It moved nowhere, but it talked, and the whispering constellation broadcast the blueprints across the stars. The last accord played her violin, and for once, the universe listened, not to conquer, but compose. Chapter 3. The drift sector became a nexus, not of power, of participation. No one commanded. Everyone contributed. And when other sectors asked for the secret, she handed them the schematics. They laughed, then built, slowly, imperfectly, beautifully. The last accord faded into myth. The constellation remained a melody nested in deep space signals. And when ships now pass each other in silence, they blink lights, in rhythm, not to identify, to remember that unity was never about agreement. It was always about rhythm, share, and sacred. Title: The Amber Divide. Year: 88,846,153.85. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac. Series 2025. Chapter 1. The fire that forgets once ignited uprisings with her voice. Now, she whispered, not out of fear but precision, in the city of Ashhaven, a place divided by walls of silken silence, she wandered from sector to sector, trading stories for warmth. Then came the wind-worn stranger cloaked in dust, bearing a map no one trusted and a name no one used. "What are you running from?" she asked. "My own echo," he said. They sat under a collapsed watchtower, and she spoke. "Strength is knowing when to reach out and when to rise alone." He nodded and stayed. Chapter 2. Ashhaven was ruled by lineage. Your district, your rights, your rations, all decided by bloodlines hitched into burnt scrolls. But fire and wind don't care for blood. They care for movement. The stranger planted wind chimes at every gate. The fire lit gatherings without permission. They taught games that crossed language, built gardens without fences, and slowly this settled. Children traded masks. Elders danced in markets once barred. It wasn't perfect, but prejudice trembled, because prejudice hates laughter shared across its lines. Chapter 3. The council tried to divide them. Laws, lies, loss. But the people chose memory, of stories, of seeds, of light and allies. When the final wall fell, no one cheered. They just walked through, together, in the fire that forgets. She kept walking. The wind-worn stranger, he vanished. Or maybe he changed, because inclusivity isn't a prize, it's a practice. And the strongest flame doesn't rage, it welcomes even those who once fled from it.